Your buddy Steve-O going through rock bottom, hero's journey, as well as seeing ghosts, right? All right, so let's get going here. So Steve-O, he's an extroverted guy. Growing up, I always thought him as a kind of a confident EP. It's great with his personality stuff because you actually really get to know somebody, and you're like, oh, you're DE. You're going through something totally different than I thought you were going through. You know what I mean? So Steve-O, he's about 50 years old. He's friends with the Jackass guys. Here's Knoxville. He's an ENFP, a mopey ENFP. One thing interesting about Steve-O is he's got the big grill, the big mouth. You'll see that with the people that are play blast, right? So I also noticed when Steve-O laughs, he has kind of like this weird, it reminds me like a Sasquatch in Harry and the Hendersons, if you remember that movie, where he has this weird like kind of like cry laugh look to him. And I see it with Tony Robbins. There's more pictures and videos you can see Tony where he does that same thing where he's got the big old teeth, obviously, but then he has like, he kind of like cries when he laughs. You know what I mean? So just interesting that similar parts and similar traits will kind of go with each other because these guys are basically the same type, minus a couple of things. One is double feminine versus double masculine. Okay, get that out of the way. And then one is EP and the other is EJ. And that's it. So he's SETE, cranked all the way up, and he's TESE, cranked all the way up. So Steve-O, therefore, going to be a very extroverted guy, going to be a very caring guy for the tribe, and hard to have his inner world. So it's like, it's fascinating growing up watching him. I'm like, oh, he's super confident. He knows what he's doing. Like, he's not struggling with depression or anxiety, and he doesn't care what other people think. Like, why would he be sitting there doing so many drugs for so long? What's bothering him? What's wrong, right? Well, looking at the math here, it's like, oh, he's taking in everyone else's point of view. He's taking in everyone else's needs. He's taking in what everyone else needs. He's taking in what everyone else sees him to be. Oh, Steve-O, you got to be the funniest, coolest, most crazy guy, and he's got to live up to that. And then he goes away, goes in his apartment, and has this huge crash, depression, drugs, because I don't know if I can live up to their expectations. That's why he does all this crazy shit, because it's all coming from like a people-pleasing kind of thing. You know what I mean? A big thing that I'm really, really seeing this week is like, you can't see it unless you believe it. You can't see it unless you believe it. That'll make a lot more sense as we go on. So doing a quick, 15-minute video on Steve-O, like what do I pick? Where do I go, right? So it's like the one random clip that I picked here to talk about, there's a million things to talk about, is that he's talking about as he's going through his rock bottom and that he's seeing ghosts. Now he knows that they're not real, at least from his perspective he's saying that. He knows that when the curtains are moving, the curtains aren't really moving, but like his perceptions and his visions are like, it feels real. Like, and to him, it's so real that it then has a change on the rest of his life. His guess is that possibly like drugs erode the dimension between the physical and the spiritual world. So we're going to get a little weird here, and then we'll try and make some sense of it at the end.
To me, they were like otherworldly like entities that were very real that only I was privy to communication with. And it's interesting that whether it's with meth or in my case with nitrous oxide and cocaine, like I think that psychosis, which is characterized by audio hallucinations, hearing voices, like various hallucinations, like seems to be, from what I understand, like fairly uniform across the boards. Like, so I have the theory that if you ingest enough drugs, that what you do is essentially erode like the barriers between, like other dimensions and stuff.
Okay, so let me just, I try and connect some dots of what he's going to be saying. Let me lay down some solids first. So it's like, what he's saying is like, the experiences seem to be very universal. And you see that with people that really get into DMT and ayahuasca and stuff like that. I heard about it, I think it's on the Rogan podcast, most likely, where there's actual scientists, actual grown-ups talking about like, hey, we might actually be doing some studies where we go into the DMT world, send people in there and try and actually map it out. Now, wouldn't it be fascinating if like you could go into the DMT psychedelic spirit world, go and like leave a little mark on the tree, leave, come back to normal life. Your friend goes on a DMT trip, goes in and actually sees the mark on the tree. Now, I know that's not literal. That's probably never going to happen, but it's like the idea of like going towards some type of, could we actually try and triangulate and use a scientific method all together to test this and see this? Because we're all seeing very common things. What the hell is going on over there? What's the theory? Is it a spirit world? Is there some universal consciousness? Or is that all inside of us? Like, what is the deal? Why is it so uniform and why is it so much the same? That is a really good question.
There were like nice things that some voices would say, and there were like mean things. So I would categorize them as angels and demons.
And what were the angels and demons?
There were angels, there were demons, and then there were tricksters. Very distinct categories. The tricksters would just put on shows, and all of a sudden, like my apartment, like the whole place would just have like lights just like going off, like lights that were never there, and like the curtains would be opening and closing, like, on their own, like where meanwhile there's like barriers that it's not possible that can happen. There was another time when I was sitting in this big swiveling chair, and the whole thing just straight went up in flames with me sitting in it, like full fire. I was surrounded, the whole chair was completely on fire, and I wasn't being burned by it. It was just like, wow, and it was to me like there was like legit like trickster spirits that were just entertaining me And ultimately, like, I suppose I would now categorize them as demons because they made me want so much to keep these experiences happening. And so that just drove the addiction, and I just consumed more and more and more.
Okay, I love that. I love that so much because like my NI is listening. He's like 3 categories. I'm like, can we get that down to 2? Can we merge tricksters with demons? And then at the end, he's like, I think we can categorize. I'm like, yes. So angels and demons. That's how and where we came up with the terms when we actually started diving into the personality code in the early years and really seeing what's going on and really seeing how people live their entire lives, going, okay, I swear to God, this person, this thing, this government, it's the worst ever. It's demonic. It's not bad. It's all of the evil is coming from this over here. And that's what we're always looking for with psychology of like, okay, when you get down to the core of somebody, when they're having a mental breakdown, a fucking drug trip, they're going crazy, like when you get way down there without all the bullshit, you're going to see saviors, demons, angels, demons, this type of extreme thing. So what I've always kind of think about is like, okay, so one theory is that you're actually going into another dimension, so that it's outside of us. The other theory would be is that it's actually all this is actually happening inside of our heads. And is that even possible? Is it even possible that there's that much going on in there? Because it feels like I'm just me. There's just one me, right? Like that's how we view ourselves. It's just me. There's not like thousands of things in here and thousands of me's and thousands of people. There's not demons and monsters and good guys and bad. Not in here, no. Wait, have you ever had a crazy dream? Have you ever got into a dream that was so real and there was people that were like blowing your mind and they were doing amazing things and saying just amazing things that you were able to like take from that and drop that and you were super impressed by people? I have. I've had dreams where I've met people that are so smart, so fast, so witty, and I'm just like blown away of how smart they are. I wish I could be like them. Wait,
And what were the angels doing?
They were expressing concern for me that they wanted me to not destroy myself. And
How would they do that?
they would plead with me to they would say that we're worried about you, like we want you to not die and such. I would hallucinate essentially interventions. At one point, all these like people, there's regular for people to be walking around my apartment that were never physically there. They were like purely, I was hallucinating, and it was like very real too. And at one point, I was sitting there in that same chair that went up in flames, and I had all this cocaine and all this nitrous oxide, and I was, just like days into it. And I leaned over to do like another line of cocaine, and I just thought, like I'm killing myself. Like, like there's no longevity in what I'm doing. Like this is just full-blown self-destruction at this point. Like I'm dying. And I remember thinking, like in that moment, I thought the very precise, distinct words. I thought, I don't care if I die. And then I leaned in to do the line of cocaine, and all in that moment, I don't care if I die. And I leaned forward, and that same chair, like it was like it turned into a mechanical bull, like some like super strong man was just like, and the message to me was like so crystal clear. And it was just like, think again, like stop, like no, like not okay. It is not okay for you to think, I don't care if you die. You need to care that you don't die.
So these unconscious spiritual demon worlds, whatever, they're going to be very masculine, very aggressive. Now you see somebody the other way around, like say Tony Robbins, like when he goes into a psychedelic spirit world, that world's going to be very feminine. And that's going to be very consistent because Tony's wearing all of his masculine in the savior state. So it is very fascinating and interesting that the spirit world that we all see is very consistent with our demons. That was one of the things that we saw early on in the years when we started really studying DMT and ayahuasca and all that stuff. When people would describe their trips, we're like, hold on, I know your type. I think it's going to be about people. It's going to be about this. Like, go, let me hear the story. And then it was just very, it was 100% consistent. That was one of the scariest things that we saw. I don't know if it's scary, but it's definitely like, well, that was weird, right? So throwing out kind of a theory on this, it's kind of like, one is like, is this the spirit world that we're all going into, or is there a spirit world there? I don't know, maybe. I used to believe very much strongly in Christianity and stuff like that, so that would be my default answer if I was still a Christian. I'd be like, oh, he's interacting with the spirit world. Those are real demons and real angels, and they're trying to interact with them through the drugs or whatever. It's like, okay, sure, maybe. Then there's kind of another like spirit. There's like the scientist spirit world, where there's like a universal consciousness. There's a universal consciousness out there, and like you're able to travel through multiple dimensions and all that kind of stuff, and be able to go into these other dimensions and other consciousnesses. And that theory, as much as I don't believe it, is gaining more ground in the scientific community today. They're like, wait a minute, I think there really is alternate consciousnesses and universes, and they're able to track that and measure that. And how come this cork, if you look at it, this one changes over here? Like weird shit like that. That's kind of like maybe that theory is going to be more and more true over the next couple hundred years. So I don't want to mark that one out. Anyways, the third one where I'm like, okay, so I hate to be the one going to the ST facts of like what's a little bit more grounded possibly, is that when you really look at inside the human mind with the dreams and stuff, is that it is very consistent. People are seeing very consistent things. And inside those worlds, there are very consistent people. And then you can look at it on a large scale, like you're having a freak out, a drug attack, a breakdown or whatever. But then also, if something is really true, you should be able to see it all the time. It's not like you go through normal life, and then all of a sudden there's this weird thing, right? It's like, it's going to be always there to some degree, and then it pops up again. So I would think that like what we're all seeing normally in dreams, in our nightly dreams, is just this stuff here is just an extreme version of it. One thing that's fascinating is what people tend to see when they really get into psychedelics and stuff is a lot of these pattern shapes. It's very fractally. You know, what is it called? The Mandelbrot set or something like that. Or if you study fractals in mathematical equations, like there's these shapes and sizes and forces that are all just seem to be down in there. The takeaway that I've had is I'm kind of like separating of like, okay, interesting science out here. There might be some alternate universe that we're able to interact with, and you can use the drugs to break that down. And you know, the CIA has the mind experiments where you can travel through. Like, great, there's really cool stuff, and I'm going to kind of wait for science to get caught up with that, and I'll kind of go along with that. I don't want to be cutting edge on that. I got other stuff to do, but that's interesting, right? What I can do right now, on the here and now, in my old 1800s technology, is I can know and I can really settle on, there's a lot of people in here. I'm not one person. There's a program that gives me the delusion that I'm one person, but I'm not one person because I'll switch moods. I'll be very mad. Who's that guy? I'm very sad. Who's that guy? I'm very happy. I'm very smart. I'm very dumb. Like, who are all these different states, all these different people? And then when I go into my dreams at night, I see these extreme, intense characters. So knowing that there is no you, there is no one you, there is no computer, there is no camera. Like, oh, it's this. No, that's the lens. Oh, it's this. No, that's the case. Oh, no, it's this. No, that's the cord. Like there is, oh, that's you. No, that's just your saver function. Oh, well, that's you. No, that's just your other saver function. Oh, well, it's this. No, that's just your demon. Oh, it's just your other demon. You got hundreds of programs in there. Which one is you? There's no you. And so it's startling when all of a sudden one you sees another you. But that's you and that's you. And that's what Carl Jung kept talking about. All crazy shit that I'm just starting to fucking look at. So I have no idea. Just kind of keep an eye on this. These are my thoughts at this time. Disclaimer.
You know, Bam's never had any consequences for his behaviors. And I think that's largely how the situation with Bam has progressed as far as it has, because he's just always been...
That's interesting you say that, because people always talk about you got to hit rock bottom. So having been on both sides, been the person who has the addiction and being the person who's trying to stage an intervention that will save someone's life that you care about, people in this audience, people watching, have someone they're trying to save. What is your advice for this learned and unique experience for you?
Well, you can't make somebody want to get better. And so in most cases, when you have a loved one who's struggling, you have to focus on yourself. It goes against every fiber of your being, if you're a mother, to kick your child out of the house and send them out into the street. But if you baby them, you bury them. Oh. Because if you shield somebody from the consequences of their behavior, they're never going to find that bottom.